the best of the week on Relevant Radio.
Now, along the journey of life, many of us may have heard advice either from our parents or from teachers or other leaders on how we interact with other people. These values might be partially true, but they might also be somewhat misunderstood. Joining us live from Fort Myers, Florida, is our longtime morning air contributor and personal success coach, Dave Duran, with much more on partially true but misunderstood values. Dave Duran is the CEO of Leading Giants and executive chairman of Best Version Media. He's also the host of the Dave Duran Show here on Relevant Radio, Saturdays at 1 p.m. Central. You can follow Dave on YouTube and LinkedIn. Good morning, Dave. Thanks so much for joining us. It's great to be with you once again.
Hey, John. Great to be with you.
What do you mean when we talk about values that are partially true but misunderstood?
Well, the greatest way to manipulate people is with a partial truth, because you can use their words against them. And this happens all the time. I mean, we see with teenagers, it's like, how come you didn't clean your room? Well, you told me to do my homework. Well, we never actually said, pick one or the other, get both done. And they use kind of one thing against each other. They pit good things against each other. We see this quite often. This is how we do it. So do not judge. We have to judge. You can't decide what to wear or what to eat or what friends to have or where to go or what job to have or what lane to drive in if you don't judge. What we cannot judge is the heart. We don't know. We can speculate, and we actually have to make speculations. When you're hiring somebody, you make a speculation about their heart. You make a speculation about the people you're about to enter into relationships with. When you pick your spouse, you make a speculation of their heart, but you can't actually know it. Only God can ultimately know it, and God can only know the culpability that they may or may not have there. But we need to make judgments. So when a line is used, make no judgment. And what that actually means is have no standard, allow all bad behaviors. And if there's anyone bad, it's the person who calls out the bad behavior, not the people actually with the bad behavior. And it's always said hypocritically, because they, of course, will call out anything they consider bad behavior, and that's fine. It's just whether you disagree with. So we have to be careful. When people have partial truths and misunderstood values, they sometimes literally just are confused. But most of the time, people use this as a power play and manipulation. And the prey is very much people who want to be good or want to be liked or don't want to be mean, and they use their goodness against them. The problem is that when a person like this comes up against a person who wants to be good and is good, but seeks the truth, and they are strengthened by the grace of God and participate in it, they will not allow them to be bullied. And they will call it like it is. And if we would have done this 75 years ago, because our country, by the way, has been in a boxing match for 75 years, where opponent has tried to soften up the competitor and wipe them out with a punch there at the end. And if it would have just happened that men in particular would have stood up and said, stop, this ridiculousness that is happening right now in our politics, in our hospitals, in our surgery rooms, in our classrooms with kids acting like a cat and you're not allowed to say anything to them. The nuttiness that we should have stopped and said, the kids will sit at the kid table and they will make no major decisions here. The adults, the rational people will sit here. That's wacky. Get out. We didn't do that because we were subject to the manipulation of this in particular partial truth of do not judge.
Well, speaking of partial truths, what would be the second partially true but misunderstood value, Dave?
This one's a tough one because it's actually, if you were to really look at it accurately, it's 100% true, but it's manipulated. And it's patience in all things. Here's why it's 100% true. It's 100% true because having patience doesn't mean not working towards something. So I always tell people that really effective people are patient in all things, but wait for nothing. The manipulation here is that patience means you need to wait. You just need to let it unfold on its own. Well, there are some things that have to be like that, but patience is to suffer well. And so it means that we basically don't need to wait. We just need to be patient while what's happening is happening. Okay. So if you want to make money because you're not earning any money and you're broke, well, get on it, but be patient while it's unfolding. If you need to lose weight because you need to be in better health, get on it, but be patient while it's unfolding. If somebody has bad behavior, well, you oftentimes are going to hurt the circumstance just by coming in and going full nuclear on them, as opposed to being a little bit patient with the timing of when you say certain things. So again, patience in all things is actually an accurate statement, but people will manipulate it by basically convincing somebody not to take action on something. And that's what the patience means. That's just not true. Take action on it, but suffer well through the endurance of the time that it takes to go from where you want to be, from where you are to where you want to be.
What's a third, partially true but misunderstood value?
Let others speak first and more. By way of principle, this is a pretty good way to live. I mean, so again, there's a partial truth here. In fact, I would even say there's kind of an extended truth here. And you've heard me say this before, when God says you have 2 ears, 1 mouth, listen twice as much as you speak. This is a silly formula. First of all, in a one-on-one conversation, it's impossible. And the person who tells you to do that clearly means to speak twice as much as you. But the reason that it doesn't make sense is because that's not the formula for communication. And it doesn't even work in every setting. I mean, right now, you and I are on the radio. If we had our audience talking to us twice as much as we were listening, radio wouldn't even work, and it's impossible. So what you need to do is ask, okay, well, how long should I speak? Until I'm understood. How should I listen? Until I understand. Okay, great. Sometimes it goes beyond that. How long should I listen? Until the other person feels understood, because they have an emotional thing they need to get through. Well, that's key in communication too. But again, that other person might have come to you for advice, and you're like, no, you just tell me what's going on. Well, you think you're trying to help them, but you're not, because they want you to speak, and you're being all self-righteous about listening too much. So we have to be careful about that. And letting others speak first, some people don't have the right to, and that's offensive to somebody. Oh, don't we have equality in all things? No. You know what? You are incompetent in what you do, and I am not incompetent at what I do. I am about to do something that is a life-saving matter, and I'm not going to get your opinion on it because I want to save the life. And then, by the way, let's put me in the circumstance of the inept one here. There's a brain surgeon, and I'm walking by, and I feel like I have the right to tell him how to do the surgery. No, I don't. And he should tell me I don't. He's the surgeon that knows how to do it. Now, that's different than a patient being able to put forth their opinion about whether or not they want a procedure or to get a second opinion. But there's a time where this is just not true. But this false idea that everyone needs a voice, again, it's sheer nuttiness. And it was always known to be nuttiness. You would never have the children back in a more traditional setting sit at the table and make adult decisions or feel like they have a voice in it. But there are times where it actually does make sense because of the emotional impact that a child will feel to get them to feel like they've got a particular buy-in or to have the decision influence. So yes, at times, but at other times, it literally makes no sense at all. And when we lose standards, we lose influence. But these are the things that people attack, patriarchy and all these different things that have to do with order. Why? Ultimately speaking, God has order. And when you reject order on earth, whether you know it or not, you're taking an attack at the order that God has provided the world. And that is a very important thing to guard.
All right, Dave, what's another partially true but a misunderstood value?
Inclusiveness is best. This is just not true. John, I'm sorry, but you know what? On Packer Sunday, I'm not inviting the Bear fan. Can you imagine the division that would take place? The repulsion. I'm kidding. So inclusion is good. That's why there's a partial truth here. Doesn't it make sense to include as many people as makes sense? Yes. But that's where it stops. To include as many people as makes sense. And I have seen some of the greatest levels of manipulation take place under the false banner of inclusion. And this goes back to that idea where people take this false high moral ground. You know what? We're going to make a consensus. We're going to have a council or a committee meeting to make this decision. And that person has no intention of doing it. It's like these dictators who would literally have people vote, and they surprisingly get 99% of the vote, despite the fact that virtually everyone knows somebody that they've tortured, killed, or has disappeared. This is an impossibility, right? But they want the illusion of inclusiveness or collective thinking. And that's a setup. That's the thing about it. We have to know that at some point, this idea of inclusiveness is a manipulation to overpower somebody. When does it make sense? When does it not make sense? And if we think it through, it becomes actually quite apparent.
And the final, partially true but misunderstood value.
Well, it's related to what we said before. Everyone should have a voice. The question is, why? Why should they have a voice? Now, if everybody owns an equal portion of a particular project or item or company, all equally, and no one stands out with greater merit or intellect or understanding or insight, yes, everyone should have an equal voice. In a democracy, people make a vote and they have an equal voice, okay? But when you want to say that an illegal immigrant who doesn't even speak the language and comes across our country illegally should vote, that equal voice, that's not equal anymore. Because what it does is it offsets a justice to the people who deserve it for somebody who does not. And that's when everyone having a voice gets to be a bit off.
Well, that's a great example. And as always, we really appreciate you being with us, Dave.
Thanks so much, John.
Dave Duran, the CEO of Leading Giants and Executive Chairman of Best Version Media. You can listen to the Dave Duran Show Saturdays at 1 p.m. Central here on Relevant Radio and the Relevant Radio app. This entire episode of Morning Air is on the Relevant Radio app. The Relevant Radio app is completely free and updated daily with fresh articles, podcasts, and prayers. Don't delay. Download the app today, and thanks for listening.